Beat to Death Survivor Support Group is a show all about game books and the readers and writers who adore them. Today on the show, I sit down for a chat with the writers and authors who have brought the brand new Gamebook Zine to life. Alright, so before we dive into the call, a quick disclaimer. This was not my proudest audio moment. It turns out that a fancy microphone only really helps if you have the power turned on, and unfortunately throughout this call I did not. Luckily my voice was picked up by my built-in laptop microphone, but it sounds a bit like I'm drowning in a sea of marbles. Anyway, the call was still a lot of fun, and I think you'll enjoy it, even with the subpar audio experience. Here we go.
One of the things that I love most about the gamebook community is that it's full of self-starters who just want to do awesome things. And one of the ways that we've seen that happening recently is with the Gamebook Zine, which launched in the spring with its first issue, spearheaded by Simon Palmer and with contributions from some great voices in the gamebook community. And so if this was not the time of a global pandemic and geography wasn't an issue, maybe we'd all be sitting around at a bar drinking a beer together to celebrate. But I thought it would be really fun to get the contributors to that first issue together, just to chat about their work and what's inspiring them and what their hopes are for the future of the zine. So thanks, everybody. We'll go around and do some quick introductions.
Yeah. So I'm Simon Palmer. I write sort of fantasy books as a hobby. Choose your own adventure kind of style stuff, interactive fiction, that kind of thing. I started a number of years ago originally as sort of in board games, then card games, and then just developed into writing, really. I saw a forum post. Someone on Facebook was talking about someone should make a magazine of this. So I did. It just went from there, really. And then a few months later, the first edition came out. We decided to make it quarterly. And here it is. First edition's out. Looking forward to making the next one now.
James Day, I guess you could call me a writer. Not published yet, but I hope to be. I mostly write novels, but I write things to help people write, and I like helping people in the community.
My name is TroyAnthony Schermer, and I write game books. My third game book is due out sometime this year. We're just working on the illustrations right now for that. It's being illustrated by the fabulous Kev Crosley. And we'll be doing all the internals as well as the cover as well.
Hi, Patrick ONeill. I'm an illustrator for Gamebooks and the Gamebook community. Done some work for the Gamebook Zine, and I'm currently working on a graphic novel. And
for listeners, if you've seen the cover art for the podcast, then you've seen Pat's work, actually. Awesome. Some of the contributors couldn't be here, including Dave Chirac, contributed the Gunslinger story and also did the fabulous cover artwork, which what a great way to kick off the zine with that.
Great, isn't it? Yeah. And he's going to be doing the second one as well. So that's really good to see.
Yeah, fantastic work.
Yeah, it's mind-bogglingly good. So now the pressure's on to keep the quality up, right?
The next edition better be good too.
So just a quick rundown. This time around, we had 2 full adventures, a teaser for Troy's upcoming game book in the Savage Realms world, 3 articles, an art piece, and then in some of the editions, there were 2 bonus mini adventures, also by Simon.
Yeah.
So quite a lot of good content this time around.
Yeah, so aiming for about 50 pages a magazine. That gives us enough for 2 relatively lengthy 20 pages and then a 10 page and a couple of others.
So let's go to the history of the zine. You said that somebody in the Authors Guild group on Facebook had said that, man, it'd be nice if there was a zine. Like, how did this sort of, band of rapscallions come together?
I think I just put a post up saying, would anyone like to join in making this zine? And then just a couple of people, the first people really just got involved, like Dave and Troy just sort of sent me a couple of ideas and I sort of edited it together and then thought, right, how long can this be? And it started off, I think, as 80 pages, and then we sort of whittled it down. And I started looking at like Lulu and Hazzard and how it could actually be done practically, and just went from there, really. And then more and more people started getting involved. And then I thought, well, I better make a Facebook group about this, and it just went from there.
So let's talk about Malivore Cataclysm's Edge. I got the sense from playing through the teaser that like the way it starts and sort of what the adventure actually is are probably two very different things, because it starts off as you're just on a bounty quest. Where I got in the adventure, without trying to spoil anything, it felt like just the very beginning of a much longer quest.
Initially, it would seem that it's just a dungeon crawler, but what it is actually it's an introduction to a much bigger, more epic storyline. If you played the teaser, you're commissioned by an individual to recover a lost family heirloom. But what happens is you end up stumbling upon a plot to destroy the world of Ataraxia. That's where you meet Malivore, your nemesis. And then from there, you pretty much abandon your quest to retrieve the lost family heirloom in lieu of trying to stop Malivore. Your trek will take you across the desert, through forest, swamp. You'll be visiting places. I guess I'll just give you some highlights. Places like the University of Divination and the Arcane Arts. You'll visit the port city of Evan-Yor, trying to secure a meeting with the Coalition of Kings to see what they want to do about it. But initially, what you have to do is you have to stop Malivore from using the Draconomicon and another artifact called the Sigil of Sargonis. Those two have to be used in conjunction with each other to raise a dragon that would bring about the apocalypse, basically. The dragon Jada Zin.
It sounds like quite an epic quest. When is Malivore out?
Sometime next year. I have an illustrator for the cover and the interior lined up. Right now, Russ Nicholson is slated to illustrate it. The cover art will be done by Alberto Del Lago, who he's been illustrating the Lone Wolf collector's editions that have been coming out. So,
in choosing the teaser, I imagine that you kind of went for obviously the beginning of the adventure, but what was that actual process of stripping it down to work as a teaser?
Well, initially I submitted it as a 77 section. Simon told me that I needed to scale it down, so what I did is I cut out 34 sections and just ended it on the part after you meet Malivore and have to decide if you're going to go to the port city of Evan-Yor or head south to the University of Divination and Arcane Arts. So I thought that was a good breaking point.
Was that a pretty smooth process, or were there like kind of painful decisions in choosing what to cut?
Well, if you look at it, you can see that I didn't renumber it. I just took out the sections that weren't relevant. I know that somebody had criticized that. They thought that, but I simply just left the original numbering and just took out the ones that weren't relevant.
Yeah, I noticed, but it actually didn't bother me. In fact, it kind of made me wonder why we usually have contiguously sequential numbers. It seems like maybe a sacred cow that doesn't need to be true or something.
Yeah, I had the same problem with, I wanted to make like a demo version of Sandbrook, my first book, and I wasn't quite sure how to do it, but the whole thing is designed in 5 chapters anyway, so I thought I'd just put the first chapter in. Now, the first chapter, of course, put over the course of the 500 pages. A lot of people questioned, where's number 58? It's like, well, it's not in the demo. You got to buy the whole book. But they just couldn't figure out why you would skip a number. It was just sort of wrong or something.
Expectations and all that.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about it. I just thought, I'll just delete the number.
Stay tuned, survivors. There's more to the episode after these brief messages. If you're hearing this, it means you're on the free stream of the podcast, and I'm so glad you're here discovering the world of game books with me. This show is made possible by the support of listeners like you. If you'd like to support the podcast, head over to patreon.com/instadeath. Survivor-level supporters get ad-free episodes up to a week earlier, with as much as 10 minutes of bonus content per episode. And of course, my gratitude for helping me survive this wacky adventure. We'll be right back to the episode after this sponsored message.
So Worldsend is the other major feature, and also Gunslinger. But starting with Worldsend, Simon, that was one of your contributions to the zine. Can you tell us a little bit about Worldsend?
Yeah, Worldsend and Catacombs from the Bloodstone 2 that I wrote for it. There was actually 3 I wrote because I didn't know how much submissions we were going to get, how much I'd need to sort of put my own stuff in to fill it out. Worldsend and Catacombs from the Bloodstone actually are from part of an open world book that I once made and never continued with. So it's part of this sort of epic narrative of wandering this sort of massive land. And 2 of the sort of locations that you come across are, so one of them is if you travel north in this open world, eventually you'll reach this part which is only accessible by water, by the sea. And that was the bare bones story of what Worldsend turned into. So I kind of took these locations and made them into sort of independent, I think about 10 pages long, I think. So Worldsend is just this coming of age story. It's you're thrust into this freezing island and told, oh, you're the son of Lord What's-His-Face, that you have to do this by yourself. Off you go. And you just have to find your way. And it's like, roughly you have to kill a bear. What that means, you don't know. So without spoiling it, there's like 4 different ways you can overcome the quest. And my joke is, if you kill the bear, you're the bad guy. You took the easy route, like, rather than going on some sort of spiritual journey or whatever. And then Catacombs from the Bloodstone, I wanted to go right back and do a classic you die every turn dungeon crawl. Even the beginning is like this hammy, you're homeless and this guy gives you a map and now you're off on a quest. And it was just like, I kind of wanted to like really early sort of fighting fantasy-esque dungeon crawl. And I just went like totally ham on the generic as possible. I see how many deaths you can put into it. And I think there's something like 30 different ways you can die in and amongst maybe 50 actual sections or something. It's some silly amount. I was going to have a section at the start where you fill in your quickest death and like the longest time you took to die. But I did silly.
Well, I learned 2 things today. One is that I'm the bad guy. And the other is that somehow I missed a full adventure. I haven't read. What did you say it was called?
Catacombs of the Bloodstone. Actually, one of the funny things with that is it's got a map with symbols on it that nobody noticed. It's like half the page is a map. And it says, you have this map. This is how you find it. You've got to figure out the code. So, of course, everywhere you go in the catacombs has 4 symbols, like the pick or whatever, and you obviously have to decipher what the map's telling you and how to get there.
2 of the other the bonus adventures, The Witch's Familiar and The Invisible Gardener, were also your submissions, Simon. And it seems like The Witch's Familiar was kind of a sort of a surprising success. Like people seem to really like it. It
really was. I did not expect that to be as well received. They're both kind of just experiments. A lot of what I do is experimental stuff. Sandbrook was quite traditional in Gamebook terms, but most of my other stuff I've written is pretty relatively experimental, because at the end of the day it's a hobby and I want to play around with it. Witch's Familiar was really popular, and Invisible Gardener is it's a tale, it's a philosophy tale. So if you've ever studied philosophy, you'll recognize it instantly. And it's problem of God thing. If it's called Death by 1,000 Cuts, if you say God's here and he's right here, he's standing there, great, I can't see him, oh, he's invisible. Well, sure, I can touch him. No, you can't touch him. He's non-corporeal. So he's invisible and you can't touch him. Okay, we'll get the dog to sniff him, prove him there. No, you can't be smelled. Oh. And so you start chipping away at it until eventually you have this being that is no different from there not being one in the first place. And that's sort of like a philosophical thing. So it was surprisingly popular. I didn't think it would be at all, really. But people seem to have liked it.
Yeah, I think maybe that's one of the advantages of the short format, right? Is ability to explore with things that you might not be willing to commit to a full adventure on.
Yeah.
Troy,
If it turned into like a 500-page thing, I don't think it would be very popular.
Pat, before you started doing sketches and art, you used to write. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I was doing a similar thing to Troy, basically magazine articles supporting local businesses and stuff like that. But I'd done some fan fiction work.
Cool. Do you think we'll see a Gamebook adventure in the zine from you in the future?
There's a possibility. I've got a few ideas.
So speaking of sketching for Gamebooks and zine, can you tell us a bit about what you're up to, Pat?
Well, I've currently got around 16 more illustrations to do for Alan Halpin's Secret of Nightmare Castle. He's currently working on a new area of dungeon underneath Newburgh. As soon as he's finished mapping that out and filling out all the references, he's going to come back to me with my next art brief for it. But in the meantime, just working on a graphic novel outside of the Gamebook area.
So James, your submission was about the process of bringing a novel from conception to done.
As I said, I like going into writing communities and like helping people. And so because I've been writing for about 4 or 5 years, and there's a lot of stuff that beginner me would like to know, and a lot of kind of questions come up in those writing communities, like how do I get an idea onto the page? How do I write characters? And so originally it's kind of like a YouTube series, so like how to take that vague idea and make it more substantial. And so that article came from the script of that YouTube video.
The one thing we haven't talked about yet is Gunslinger, which is Dave Chirac's submission. I'm curious about others' thoughts, but I really quite enjoyed it. It took like more of a game mechanics approach than a narrative approach, I think, which was quite different from the other entries in the zine this time around. Anybody have thoughts on their experience playing through Gunslinger?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it was really different as well. The sort of the game aspect made it quite different from some of the other things, and I quite liked that. It was more sort of mechanical rather than some of the things that I'd been putting in. So yeah, I was really impressed with that. I thought the art and everything went really well with it, and just the way it was worded. Just in reading it, you get a sense of, because of the way it was worded, of being like in the sort of Wild West, and it had that sort of idea. Nightmare to it, because the spell checker came up with almost every single word, but I really enjoyed reading to it.
And I'm sure tables were fun to try and format and everything. But it was interesting too. I think that was a trick to getting a lot of sort of gameplay out of a very small, amount of text. Was like the variety of encounters through just a table, right? And dice rolls. It worked pretty well. Cool. So that's issue 1, the spring issue of 2021 Gamebook Zine. But I hope there's a bright future. You've already said that Dave is going to contribute a cover art for the next.
Yeah, we've got cover art. I'm just having a look at what else we've got. Adam Mitchell's got another, I think he sent me yesterday. So there's a sort of follow-up to his one on dyslexia about marketing. So that'll be good. We've hopefully got Boomslang being done. So that was it was going to be in the original spring one, but it wasn't quite finished. So that's hopefully being done. Pat, of course, has put in some more artwork. Fantastic. And Troy as well has passed on some of his art, which is awesome. So I'm probably going to put that in. We've got some other things as well. Got another 2 entries there, sort of waiting to be edited together, and so yeah, it's looking pretty good for the summer. So it's going to be a problem keeping it down to 50, I think.
I think, Troy, you managed a really good balance between getting to the next choice for it to be a game, but also really evocative and descriptive language.
Thanks. That's very encouraging to me. So.
I definitely think that teaser did quite well when you get to that end bit and you kind of think, oh, there's all these like other lands and I can kind of see how it's going to work. And you're like, oh, I actually kind of want to see that now.
Yeah, you want to read it, definitely.
Yeah.
So Simon, if people want to get their hands on issue 1 of Gamebook Zine, where should they go to get?
It's on itch.io and it's also on Drive-Thru RPG. So if you have a look at it in itch.io and just do a search for Gamebookzine, it'll come straight up, and it's just a free download from there. If you can search for it on DriveThruRPG, you can also find it on there, both just free downloads. And of course, the Facebook page is, we're up to about 250 people now, which is really good. And you can go there and discuss the latest issue and upcoming issues, anything else that you want to talk about game books or anything really.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to support the show, become a patron at patreon.com/instadeath. A special thanks to our guests and to the contributors who help make the show better than I ever could on my own. Intro music graciously provided by Jesse Johnson, aka Zenoda. Find more great music by searching Jesse Johnson or Zenoda, spelled with an X, on YouTube and most major streaming platforms. Podcast cover art generously contributed by Patrick ONeill. You can learn more about Pat's art on his Facebook page, Pat ONeill Art.